It's no doubt that 2020 has been a very turbulent year for many people's careers. And what I want to do in this video is I'm going to take a step back and really just try to see if I can offer some general guidelines about some of the things that you can think about, some of the things that you can do to try to help make 2021 a better year for your own career. If you're somebody whose career hasn't been affected by what's been going on in 2020, then what I'm going to talk about in this video can just kind of serve as a reminder of some of the things that you might want to consider when you are trying to improve the situation that you're in. And the very first thing I want to talk about really has to do with making sure that you choose the right person that is going to help you guide yourself to the right place that you want to be. And the reason why this is important is because there are different people out there who have different motivations for wanting to teach people about the business analysis profession. And the last course that I personally took myself was a course called Enterprise Risk Management. It's a course that was offered at the University of Toronto. And the reason why I chose that course had a little bit to do with the subject matter that was being covered in the course. But when I chose to take that course had a lot to do with the person who was guiding the class through the materials of that course. And the reason why I chose that person is because the person who was teaching that course was actually the CEO of an investment firm here in downtown Toronto. And the fact that a person in that position was choosing to teach that course told me a lot about what I was going to get, but the quality of what I was going to get in that course, because the motivations that a person in that position has to teach, the motivations that they have are very different from the motivations of a person who may be teaching whatever subjects they're teaching for different reasons, okay? Generally speaking, there are really two main reasons why people choose to teach, okay? The first one is probably the most common one, which is the profit motive, right? Person chooses to become an instructor or a teacher because they have a certain business that they're trying to build. They're trying to turn a certain profit out of whatever it is that they're doing, and absolutely nothing wrong with that. The only thing you should understand is that a person whose profit motive is their primary motivation for teaching is going to give you a very different level of quality, a very different level of effort than a person who is teaching because they want to teach, right? The reason why I chose to take that course with the CEO of a company is because a person like him, you know, making $250,000 to $350,000 to $500,000 a year, somebody in that salary bracket, the reason why they choose to teach is usually very different from the reasons that other people have, right? A person who's making $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year doesn't do it for the money, right? Usually their primary motivation for teaching has to do with the fact that they've achieved everything that they want to achieve in their careers, and teaching for them is now the next level because it is now offering them the meaning that comes from sharing the knowledge that they've learned throughout their entire careers with the next generation of people that are coming down the line. And so when a person like that teaches a course, they are going to be coming at their teaching from a significantly different angle than a person who is primarily motivated by profit, okay? So when it comes to you choosing the person that you want to learn from, just make sure that you understand exactly what their motivations are. And if you can find somebody who is in a position where they're teaching because they want to, instead of because they are trying to generate enough profit to buy another boat or, you know, buy a better car or buy a beach house or whatever the case may be, you're going to get very different levels of education. And even if you choose not to pay for that education, you're going to get very different levels of guidance from people who are actually have their heart into it versus people who are just in it for the money, right? So that is the first thing that I think you should consider. Again, the way I choose my courses, I always, when I'm trying to enroll into a course, I always try to look for the person who has the want to teach, not the need to teach a course, right? So they're not in it primarily for the money, essentially. So make sure that whatever you can do to arrive at that, that is the first thing that's going to help you get into a better place, because you'll start to get good education. Second thing that you should be doing is that you should really be putting a lot of effort into understanding your own needs down to a certain level as well. And so this really has to do with how much progress you make and what kind of responses you get from the people that you're trying to learn from, right? There are certain types of questions that will, for example, questions that come to me where a person will ask a question and I can almost automatically tell that they haven't put a whole lot of effort into trying to understand their own needs, which usually speaks a little bit more to how motivated they are in learning about the profession. And so with those types of questions, I tend to be less motivated myself to answer those types of questions, because I feel that the person on the other side doesn't really have their heart into learning the material, right? If you do a little bit of investigation, a little bit of exploration of your own needs, you can start to ask more intelligent questions, and that actually really starts to show through in the types of questions that you ask. And luckily in our community, almost all of the questions that we get are usually very intelligent questions that are very well rooted in people understanding something about the profession before they ask. Oftentimes, from time to time, we'll just get a general question. This tends to happen a lot more on YouTube, and it happens a lot more on LinkedIn, where somebody will reach out to me and say, hey, I'm trying to become a business analyst. What skills should I learn? That I can almost automatically tell that the person is looking for a certain type of an answer. They haven't necessarily put in a lot of effort into trying to understand, or if they have put in a lot of effort, they haven't had the right tools to kind of help them understand things so that they can start asking more intelligent questions. So really the whole point of you understanding your own needs is to make sure that you have some knowledge of the things you don't know, right? Because this is the first stage that you need to get yourself to, so that you can start asking questions about the things that you actually really need to know. And you'll find that once you start asking more intelligent questions, you're going to get much better responses, and that is going to help you get yourself elevated in your profession much more quickly, because you're putting in the work and then you're asking intelligent questions, and the responses you get are going to be much more helpful than if you were to just kind of broadly ask a certain question and hope that somebody knows what it is that you're looking for, right? Now, some of the tools that we make available to help you understand your own needs are available completely for free of charge. So if you have listened to our podcast, for example, we have in 2020, we have up to 7 episodes of our podcast. We have released a business analyst dictionary that will explain to you what some of the common terminology is in business analysis, to help you start to get a little bit more familiar with the language of business analysis. And if you haven't already joined our community, there are well over 40 videos that have been published inside of our community for our community members to help them start to get some footing in the profession and to start understanding some of the intricacies and some of the complexities of the profession, so that they can start to ask intelligent questions. And many of these videos have a lot of really good questions that are being asked about the subject matter that are there. We have some members inside of our community that are just asking amazing question after amazing questions. And even though sometimes I don't have the time to get to those questions right away, I do love the fact that they are being asked in the way that they are. And typically what we do is we take the questions that we can't answer right away, we put them into our Q&A backlog, and then we answer them when we can. All right. So there are a lot of tools that you don't necessarily have to spend any money on in 2021 that are going to help you start to understand what some of your own needs are when it comes to the profession, start to give you a bit of a footing. So make sure you're taking advantage of those tools. One of the other primary tools that are going to be available in 2011 inside of our community is the Business Analyst Primer. So a lot of the materials that we publish here inside of our community are kind of really just there. And the purpose of the primer is to start to add a little bit more structure, so that somebody who's completely new to the profession can come and actually go through the primer and start to understand why we're even talking about some of these subjects. So it'll have a bit more of a core structure to a lot of the community materials that we're adding in there. So again, I hope you choose to take advantage of all of the material that exists in there. The third thing that you should really be doing is really making sure that you're checking your own expectations from time to time to make sure that what you expect out of your career is realistically possible. And this tends to be more of an issue for analysts who are a little bit less experienced or aspiring analysts. And it typically tends to be more of an issue for people who are generally a little bit younger and have less life experience, because it can be normal to really have really wild expectations of what you're capable of achieving in your career. And those wild expectations, I think, should eventually be adjusted to match the reality of what's possible. And so I do see some aspiring analysts, for example, who are trying a little bit too hard to get into the profession too quickly, and they want a lot of easy answers to a lot of the very complicated questions that they have. And oftentimes this has to do with the fact that they have wildly unrealistic expectations of what is possible. And I talk a little bit about this because of the fact that I myself have been in this. I'm speaking to you about this from actual real world experience, because when I started off my career, I originally thought, I had overestimated my own capabilities in a lot of ways, but a lot of the expectations that I had out of my own career were very unrealistic in reality. And I can remember a specific instance, especially there's an instance of when I had a role with a business analyst, but I felt like I wasn't being paid enough, for example. And I started off the salary conversation with my manager and eventually my director. And I was very point blank about it. The way that I try to be with everybody, I essentially just went to our director and I said, look, I believe that the value of the work that I'm doing is well above and beyond what I'm being compensated. And I said, I believe that I'm worth X amount. And my director at the time just looked at me point blank and said, look, I agree that you're providing more work than you're being compensated for. So there's some room for that. You're not worth what you're asking for. And said it to me point blank. And if I had taken that feedback if I'd taken that feedback in the wrong way, I could have very easily kind of let my unrealistic expectations of what I should be getting completely stunt my own career development, right? I could have said, no, forget it, I'm going to go look for something else and try to find something else to let the job market set that reality in to say, no, you're not worth that much. But I knew that the person was telling me this in good faith, right? They were just telling me, just based on their own experience, look, I have multiple departments under me. I have lots of different analysts, and I'm telling you that you're not worth what you're asking for. And I took that feedback. I think I took that feedback in a good way to say, look, you know what, maybe my expectations are a little bit out of whack here, right? And so it's normal to be in that position, but the important thing here is that you have to learn to adjust your expectations. It's okay to have wild expectations. It's okay to have very high expectations of what it is that you want, but when you start to see that your reality doesn't actually is not going to match those expectations, you have to now start to adjust your own expectations to make sure that you are capable of getting yourself into a position that you're going to be comfortable and happy with. Because I'll tell you that wild expectations are usually the biggest source of people getting burned out too easily inside of their careers. And wild expectations are typically the biggest source of career dissatisfaction, right? If you feel like you're dissatisfied, let's say you are a business analyst and you're dissatisfied, you should do a real good reality check on what your real expectations are. And I don't want to say this to discourage you, but I want to make sure that you have high expectations and you adjust those expectations to match your reality. That is the optimum place that you could possibly be in your career. Okay, so those are really the three main things that I think that if you really kind of just think about them and you think through and you start to make better decisions based on these things, that you'll ultimately end up in a better place in your own career, just both position-wise, but even job satisfaction-wise. All right, so I hope the video is helpful. If you haven't joined our community yet, make sure you do join our community because we have a lot of materials that can help get you into a better place in your career. I'll leave this video here and I'll see you on the next one.